Hello and welcome to Confetti Chat. My name's James from James Douglas Films. This is Frankie from Pink Photographics, and we're going to be talking you down the aisle and waffling about weddings. Today we're talking about ceremonies, and with us we've got Claire, the celebrant.
He has to concentrate when he says that word.
Celebrant, not celebrant. It's celebrant.
But it sounds fancier.
I think we should stick with celebrant.
Celebrant.
If you really need to. I think that sounds good.
To discuss ceremonies, and there are lots of options. Go. Options. What are we talking?
Well, from a celebrant's point of view, tons of options really. I mean, it's the days I think are really gone where everybody is a kind of turn up. You've got a list, you've got a whole sort of series of questions, almost like an interview that you have to answer and fulfill and then get out of there as quickly as possible. If you don't want a religious ceremony, at the moment that's the kind of only other option if you're going to go down the kind of legal, civil route, unless you turn to celebrants. And then at that point, the options really do open up because you can be as personal as you want, you can be as traditional as you want, you can be as out there as you want. And it all is kind of crafted completely with what your ideas are really and your likes and dislikes.
So if I think back to like my parents' era of weddings, I'm 99% sure there was religious ceremony, registry office, and probably not much outside of that.
No.
Then we've had wedding venues that can, you know, that whole, what's the phrase the registrars always use? We hear it week in, week out.
Solemnised for
this has been for whatever
Yeah.
the lawfully whatever, these kind of places that are allowed to have weddings. And then I think I can remember that there was a period of time when they allowed this to suddenly be outdoors with specific structures. I think
You had to have a permanent outdoor ceremony area, didn't it? And you had to have it done inside that. Guests could be outside, but the actual marriage ceremony had to be inside that structure.
So, your choices suddenly gets huge. You've got the traditional sort of religious church fairy tale wedding. Then now you've got lots of options with stately homes and wedding venues, and these places that look, they're beautiful, aren't they? And from the point of view of one of those spaces, all of a sudden they've got a huge revenue stream. I think it's great. Fair play to them. But it doesn't stop there now, does it? It seems to me that I've been to filmed lots of different weddings where all of a sudden there's options galore. So how does it work with, say, a celebrant or with a humanist, or how do these ones work?
So these ones, because the thing you have to remember is a celebrant wedding and a humanist celebrant wedding is no different, are still not legally binding in England and Wales. So there's a lot of changes afoot to try and correct that, because obviously, what is a religious wedding, what is a civil wedding is now very much a grey area. Everybody's got their own beliefs and differences, so it's odd not to allow people who might want something secular, but maybe with a religious belief in there as well, or any other combination, to be legally recognised. But that's really why with a celebrant you can sort of do it anywhere, as it were. Now with a registrar, what they did under COVID rules was to start to relax the outdoor thing a little bit, and you didn't have to have this permanent structure. So it meant that there was a lot more choices, but still had to be in a place that was licensed for weddings. So it couldn't be that you could have it in your back garden or in that orchard at the end of your drive, like in America, and like in lots of places, like in Australia, like in lots and lots of other places, where you can actually get married wherever. It's about the person there, the officiant, the person delivering the wedding is the person who is in America, in Australia and other places who are legally allowed to marry you. In this country, bizarrely, it's the physical location that becomes, permissible for a wedding to take place and be legally binding. So what we're hoping will happen that will become more efficient led, more about the person being allowed and being kind of, legally allowed to be the person who marries two people. But because of COVID, it was allowed to be in a licensed venue but in their grounds, so it didn't have to be under this structure. So you did see this explosion, really, for health and safety reasons, of these outdoor weddings just
I loved it.
on the lawn. It was absolutely beautiful,
it.
really lovely. And now they've agreed that that can continue as a sort of almost stopgap, and we'll see what happens under the proper reform. So that's going to continue, which is lovely, but it still means that once you veer off the property, then all of a sudden the legal restrictions are put back in place, and you won't be legally. But from a celebrant point of view, what we often say is, a bit like when a baby's born, you don't say, oh, well, we're not going to celebrate that until we register the name and at the register office. Yeah. You celebrate the day that they're born, where it's the meaningful day for you, even if that's like, the labour might span 2 days. It might be ambiguous, really, but, the day it's called is when they're born. It's not when you sign it. Similarly, when somebody dies, you remember the day that they died. You don't necessarily think about the day of the funeral necessarily, or the day that you registered the death. It's all about when the meaningful thing happens. And so what a lot of couples are doing is saying, do you know what? We will do a very, very brief register office ceremony to have the legal bit done, but all those meaningful bits, the vows, the rings, anything else that they want to have in there, that will be our wedding day, wherever we want it to be.
That obviously there's pros and cons. The pros for that, sure, it buys you the freedom to do anything you want, be anywhere you want to be, and run it however you want to.
And timing, all those things. One of the things, when I speak to couples, it's amazing how many couples don't realise that when you get married in a civil ceremony, that you're going to get a registrar turn up that you 9 times out of 10 will have never met before. And that might not be a bad thing. You might be absolutely fine with that. There's no problem with that for you, potentially. But it really depends on the individual and everything else. If you look at when you're planning your own wedding, especially nowadays when there's Pinterest and YouTube and Instagram and there's everything to look at, let alone physical shops to go into, you spend a lot of time thinking, do we want that one or that option? Do we want this person or that person? And that's the one thing that it's sort of taken out of your hands completely with a registrar's wedding, is that you're going to get whoever turns up.
And people want to be in control, don't they? They want to know exactly what's happening on their wedding day, because not knowing is the worst feeling. Yeah. And not having that control over any sort of element of their day.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not a nice feeling.
Because you're picturing it, and you're thinking, okay, I'm nervous, but I'm picturing how it's going to be, and you're going to be there at the end of the aisle, and I've got the bridesmaids are going to be here, and my friends are going to be there. But then you can't picture who is going to be this person who's going to be saying all these words to you, or who's going to be telling your guests that they have to put their phones off.
Yeah.
If you want an unplugged ceremony, who is going to be doing that? The chances are it was going to be a registrar who you don't know whether they're going to say it kindly or nicely. And the amount of couples I've heard who will say...
we've witnessed them ones,
who'll say, wow, the energy just was taken right out of the room with a list of instructions right at the beginning. Now, some registrars will do that amazingly and brilliantly, and they will just, make it a magical, wonderful... Because that's their job, obviously. But you don't know, and you don't get to pick. And so that's another freedom that you get with a registrar.
It's funny you should mention this, because I've never really thought about it, but I have noticed some quite wild differences between registrars. Where specifically in the bit where they're reciting the vows for the couples to answer back, the spacings is sometimes different.
Yeah.
And the couple... Obviously, they're under pressure anyway. They've got they know the line. They've heard it before. They know what they've got to say, and all of a sudden the sentence gets broken up in a different place, and they fumble across their own words because they're expecting a longer phrase to repeat.
And that is the bit that most couples fear, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's it.
Just saying the words exactly, because like you're saying, even if you've practiced it at home. You don't know how that registrar is going to say it.
They might space it differently.
And if they're just spacing it up in a different space to what you're used to, it's just going to throw them. Then they're going to feel embarrassed if they mess it up, and then that's all they're then going to be thinking about.
I feel the same about phone numbers.
Yes, exactly.
Anybody who decides a phone number not in the format I want it, I can't remember it.
No, exactly.
And someone goes, "Oh, is this your phone number?" And you go, "Hang on a minute."
Say it again.
And then you say it in your head the same way, and you go, "Yes, yes?" Question mark.
And I think the couples really, I really feel for them.
It throws them so much when you see that happening. And again, it's part of that relationship, that freedom, I suppose, but that relationship that you get with a celebrant. I mean, this is going to sound a bit corny, but I literally have a little bit of a falling in love with every couple because you learn
I'm
their
invested.
stories.
I'm invested with them.
You are so in there with them. You're thinking ahead, going, I know that this is going to throw you a bit, so let's sort this out beforehand. I know that you've talked about this sort of thing being a worry, so why don't we do this?
And
or I was thinking
what's going to create emotion.
Yeah.
So you know that's a bit that's going to, like, if they're talking about, I don't know, like a family member or something like that, there's going to be emotion. So you will then factor that in, whereas some registrars could just be, let's read a minute, and then
it's done.
Oh wait, she's crying.
Yeah.
They haven't paused or let them take it in or anything.
Yeah. And I think that's it. And that bit that you talk about, the vows, whenever I speak to couples, by far the vows are the bit that they're worried about saying out loud. By a long way, that's the number one worry. They worry a bit about the rings not going on, but that can always be made into a bit of a bit of fun. It never works. It's fine. But when it comes to the vows, that is, and it doesn't take much to be able to just sit with them and go, okay, that's where I'm breaking it. Does that make sense? And that's all done before.
I've had weddings before when one of the couple has fluffed the lines a little bit, and then they've had to stop. And the registrar's been like, right, okay, we now need to, obviously, everyone stop laughing, calm down, whatever. We now have to start again because they have to be done exactly to the letter. Whereas, obviously, with your ceremonies, it doesn't have to be, does it?
Little bit of a wibble.
But again, it's nice because they're more personalised, aren't they? If there's a little bit of a, they mispronounce a word.
But also, know them as a couple.
Yeah.
So you know whether, if they make a mistake, laughter is the appropriate saving. So you know that they'll prefer it to be a bit like, should we try that again? And then it'll be funny. Or you'll know if they're a very kind of meaningful and much more about the kind of touching aspects of it all, that they'll want us to say, it's okay, let's do it again.
Yeah.
And you know them by that point, so you know what they're going to feel all right with.
To reassure them.
What way to take it. And I think all those sorts of things are what people are expecting to have, and it kind of throws people when they go, oh, hang on, but then who's gonna reassure me when I get to the top of the aisle? Who's gonna do this? And you just don't know. So there's a lot more freedom. Most celebrants, I don't think I've ever met anyone who does more than one wedding a day.
Yeah.
So again, that's that kind of pressure of time's gone as well, because
it's nice for us, isn't it, when we find out that it's a celebrant wedding, because we know that there's not going to be a registrar. You're going to be 10 minutes late. We've got to go literally do the ceremony. I mean, obviously not all registrars are like this.
Not at all.
But they've got a schedule.
Yes, exactly. Some may only do one wedding a day. Others may have a jam-packed day that they're literally, they have to be on time, because if the first one in the morning, it runs half an hour, then obviously it's going to have a knock-on for the rest of the day. There is their time. Yeah. They have to be a lot stricter with their time.
Yeah.
But then it's nice when there isn't that time constriction, because we can just sort of go along with the flow. Yeah. We don't have to worry about right, we need to go in 10 minutes, we need to do this, you need to go and see the registrar, it's sort of like, obviously there is a schedule, but it's not so strict.
No, it's not so strict. And it means that, if you're waiting for a guest to get there, and they're texting someone to say, 10 minutes away, I'm just going to be parking, or whatever it might be, we can fill. We can make those 10 minutes just, be seamless and sort of.
I filmed a church wedding where the mother of the groom lost the church, couldn't find the church, driving around the countryside. Because of this, they delayed the start of the wedding. Yeah. Understandably, but because it was a church wedding and they had an absolute cut-off point, they started axing bits from the ceremony. So they lost one of the hymns, they lost a reading. I think that basically everything just got truncated down, because the vicar was like, we've got a finish time. And you think, that's not what they wanted. Ultimately they've made these decisions. They wanted that hymn, they wanted this.
I mean, you know, things do go wrong. I always say weddings are more like a live show than a pre-recorded, glitzy show. You know, the weather, you know, babies crying, things will happen, and you've just got to roll with it. And I think that's a skill in the person where you can think, well, have they managed that in a way that hasn't, you know, made it even more stressful and has just made the whole thing easy? You know, that's what you want. But it also means that with the timing, you can push your wedding ceremony into later afternoon if you want to as well. So I've been getting a lot more inquiries and done quite a few this last year, twilight weddings. So, you know, you're actually getting people who are starting the day a lot later.
Yes.
So they're actually getting up much more relaxed in the morning. They may be doing their bridal party or their wedding party preparations after light lunch, you know, and then starting their wedding at 3, half 3, 4, even 5 o'clock at night. And then you've got, depending on what the weather's like, you've got golden hour, that's immediately afterwards. You've got twinkly lights if you're having a winter wedding. You're throwing yourself right into when everything looks its best. Yeah. Including you know, if you're not a morning person,
yes.
You know, there's nothing to stop you sort of, you know, you're easing into your face a little bit as the day goes on. And there you go, just taking your time. And then also you often don't have to feed everybody twice. You haven't got those dead spaces, you know, all those sorts of things. So it's just that amount of freedom. But what you haven't got the freedom to do is for it to be legally binding there and then.
I had a wedding during COVID that it was just the two of them. They were little secret wedding. They weren't telling anybody. They had 2 witnesses and nobody else knew about it. And obviously it kept on getting changed and changed and changed. And one of them was in the forces, going over to America, so they had a deadline of when they had to get married to then be able to go over together. And I mentioned to him, like, have you heard of a celebrant? And they were like, no, what's this? Because she rang me, she was getting so stressed out. She still wanted to have the do, but she wanted to have an outdoor thing, but obviously she couldn't. So I was like, right, have the legal bit, just the two of you and your witnesses in the morning. So I did prep for both of them. They got ready together.
Yeah.
They then disappeared so that she got ready, did a first look photo. They went and did the ceremony, the legal bit. I couldn't photograph that because obviously it was during COVID. Yeah. They did that. Then I met them afterwards. I think it was Barnsdale Gardens. And then we went and did a outdoor celebrant-led. Oh my God, it was beautiful. Yeah. And it was just exactly because she still got... That's still her wedding day. Yeah. She had this and all the big celebrations, the tea party outside and all of the lovely photos, a big dress, everything. Yeah. But it was just then, she had her legal bit over there. Yeah. And then we went over there and had another bit.
Because in a way, you know, when you think about the bit in a church, for example, you know, it used to always be the case that you would sort of swoop off the couple to the side or into the vestry, and they would do the sort of signing bit, and then that would never be photographed, and maybe there was a ceremonial book or something like this, and then you would come back in, and all right, there are those sorts of contractual words that need to be said between the individuals, all the individuals concerned, but you know, it was never the most kind of meaningful bit of it, if you like. It's always the other bits around it and how you build that up. It's everything else. And so having those separately is no big deal. And I think I've certainly found a lot of, I don't know whether this is stereotyping, but certainly a lot of grooms feel a lot more contented with the idea that the legal bit's taken care of.
The pressure's gone, isn't it?
That pressure's gone, you know, and then it's just all the kind of, you know, us two.
The fun part of the wedding, rather than I have to get this exactly right, this is the legal binding bit. Yeah. If that's done out of the way, they can then just relax and have fun on their wedding day, can't they? And
some couples like to do a kind of almost a mini anniversary. They celebrate the anniversary and they get all the cards and presents on the big celebrant ceremony day, but then they know they've got this other little, you know,
just for
another one just for them. This sort of that's when we did our legals, but, you know, and you'll see that quite a lot actually, where they say we always go out for dinner,
twice the presents.
Yes, that's
it. Damn it!
Have two.
Missed out on that one.
So it's really lovely, but it just means that you get to choose. You know, you get to choose. You can actually say who and what kind of celebrant and celebration you want.
And what music.
Because that's the point. I mean, I think, you know, when people talk about what restrictions are with registrars, it's often about the venue that you think of. But it can be all these sorts of little things. It always reminds me, if you remember there was the Radio 1 band list of songs, and it's a very similar thing where, you know, it is continually updated, and there are songs and music that you are not allowed because there might be a word in there, like Angels, Robbie
My
Williams.
favourite song! Not allowed.
You're not allowed. And there are those sorts of things, and lots of people will say, oh, we're not having religious songs anyway, so it doesn't matter, but you'd be surprised at how many are on that list. Or, you know, this is quite sad actually, I think. My husband's mum was at our wedding, and it was a registrar wedding because we didn't know about celebrants back then. And she was this gorgeous little Irish woman, and she was a little bit uncertain because it wasn't in a nice Catholic church as she'd imagined it to be. And we said, well, that's okay, would you do a reading for us? And she'd found this really nice one. It was an Irish blessing. And when we showed the registrar, immediately it was like, no, she's not doing that. And you're thinking, well, how am I going to tell this 83-year-old woman who this is, you know, the only wedding of her sons that she is going to ever see, and she's not allowed to say it. And so we hastily doctored a few bits and said, well, is that okay? And I remember my mother-in-law said to me, what are they going to do if I say God bless you at the end?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, I don't know, but maybe just don't.
You might just like burst into flame or something.
I don't know. Anyway, of course, at the end of it, she just went, and may God bless you. And we just sort of, I didn't hear anything, did you? I didn't hear a thing, that was all fine. But, you know, that was quite a sad bit because, you know, she'd picked it. It was a really lovely reading.
And it meant something to her.
It meant something to her and my husband. And, it was all those things. It was like, nope. You're not having that. And you're thinking, okay, well, that's why. And that's part of the reason when I learned about the job of celebrant, I was like, yeah, well, that's not happening to anybody else on my watch. And it's those sorts of little things that you just forget.
I don't think you... It's not in the forefront of your mind at any point that there are going to be these... what seem to be arbitrary barriers that are just...
ridiculous hurdles.
These ridiculous hurdles, that are, they just seem to be set up to... Obviously, they're historic, aren't they? They've come from a place...
They were there for a reason, and they made sense at the time. There was a distinction between church and state.
Very, very key thing, isn't it?
And it made sense, At the time, it made utter sense. But we've moved on, and we don't just keep doing things because that's the way it's always been done. You know, and so there's a lot more reason now for people to sort of think about actually what would be meaningful to me. This is a major thing in my life. This is a big moment. Why are we just saying, you've got to do that though?
Are we the only country that has that?
No, I don't think we are, but I do think we're one of the only countries who perhaps don't give people a little bit more flexibility in one way or another, and I think, if you think about... I mean, it's always silly, isn't it? When you'd have been the same. You look at these American, normally sort of, comedies or soap operas or whatever, and then they're always like, I've been ordained, I can marry you, right here. Joey. Well, the amount of, when I became a celebrant, the amount of people who went, so you're going to be like Joey Tribbiani?
Like, dressed in like a war outfit.
And actually, one of my first weddings that I did was a couple who said, well, we love Friends, and we watch it every night, and we'd love a bit of Friends in there, and I was so tempted to say, do you want me to do the speech, the Joey Tribbiani speech? Like, no. But we didn't get it in there. But and so a lot of couples, as we all have grown up watching all these things, that just said, well, we thought that we could just have it in our back garden. And you're like,
That's incredible, I mean, TV does influence, don't you?
Yes.
We assume.
That's it, you just think that's across the board that's how it is, don't you?
Yeah, why not? But so you can so, and I have done some gorgeous weddings in people's back gardens. Tiny little back gardens, great big rolling things, you just think you've got to have this amazing back garden, but really lovely little back garden weddings.
Sometimes that works better, doesn't it? Because you're having such a personalised ceremony, that having something like a venue or garden that means something to you, it's really lovely, really nice. Yeah,
it is. And it means, again, particularly for people who want to be in control a bit more, it means that they know what they're cooking and they haven't got to worry about, so-and-so's celiac and so-and-so has an allergy. And so, especially with allergies, people have got more control over their own kitchens and their own places if they want to do that sort of thing. So many reasons. So many reasons.
Well, thanks ever so much. That's been hugely informative, I think. Yeah, really cool. So to summarise then, essentially, past your obvious choices of religious and registry office and then a venue, which has now gotten more relaxed. I didn't realise how much more relaxed that had got. We've now got the option of like celebrant style things, which opens the door hugely.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thanks ever so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.